Hello, I'm Dr. Greg Church, and I'm with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service in Collin County. I'm the county extension agent for horticulture, and I have a presentation I'd like to give on tomatoes. And so tomatoes are a very popular fresh market vegetable. They're the fourth most popular in America. The average American eats about 23 pounds of tomatoes each year, and over the last 20 years, tomato consumption has increased 30%. It's estimated that 93% of gardens grow tomatoes. California and Florida are the largest producers of tomatoes. Tomatoes are often red, they're considered a berry, and they're a member of the nightshade family. The scientific name is Solanum lycopersicum, which originated in South America, and it's estimated it was first cultivated by Native Americans in approximately 500 BC. Europeans discovered it in either 1493 or 1521, and so that depends on whether it was Columbus or Cortez. The U.S. produces over 20 million metric tons each year, valued at $2 billion each year. Tomatoes are considered to have the highest economic value out of all different garden vegetables, and it's very nutritious as well. Lycopene is one of the most powerful natural antioxidants and is found at high levels in tomatoes. There are other antioxidants like carotene and anthocyanins. There are a lot of vitamins such as vitamin A and C, and some varieties have higher values of these. There are a variety of different types of tomatoes. Rutgers University classifies the tomatoes into these different categories. And they also estimate there's 75,000 tomato varieties that are grown. There are a lot of different uses for tomatoes. This photo just shows how creative you can get with tomatoes. It also encourages children to be interested in eating them. And so just use your imagination on how you could prepare tomatoes in different meals. So if you want to grow tomatoes, where do you start? Well, it starts with proper planning. And so a successful garden always starts with this. And so planning and design, soil preparation, plant selection, installation, and maintenance are all important parts of growing a tomato successfully. And it starts with planning around the garden calendar. So here's an example of a vegetable gardening calendar that we use here in Collin County. And in general, tomatoes should be planted after that last freeze. So the average last freeze for Collin County is March 15th. Each year is rarely average, so be prepared for a late freeze. And so being prepared would be able to provide some cold protection for the plant. It's encouraged if you grow tomatoes here in Texas or other hot parts of the country is to plant those plants as early as possible in order to beat the heat, because high temperatures prevent fruit set, especially in large tomato varieties. This shows a comparison of different climates. Miami, Florida can grow tomatoes year-round, while Collin County cannot. This shows how the average temperatures and the minimum and maximum temperatures differ. And so we have a window of opportunity to grow tomatoes successfully before it gets too hot. It should also be noted that you can have a fall crop of tomatoes, but you'll have to plant those in July and August in order to be able to harvest in the fall. So it can be challenging to water and establish those tomatoes during the hot part of the year. Here's another look at the different months and the average temperatures. So when you're planning a garden and designing it, site selection is important. Here's some different factors to consider. The space, so you have to know how much space that plant requires. Soil is important. You may consider getting a soil test. And you also should look at the drainage, pH, nutrients, and other soil properties. Water is key. Make sure you have quality water. Our soil testing lab also tests water for irrigation purposes. Make sure you have adequate light, such as at least 8 hours a day. So always allow enough space for your garden plants to reach their mature size. I know it's tempting when you plant those tomatoes, they're so small and you want to plant them close together, but consider how big they're going to get. So make sure you provide adequate space. Also consider how you're going to arrange any staking, trellis, or caging systems. And then a general rule of thumb is plant them 3 to 4 feet apart. If you have limited space, consider the square foot gardening system. It allows you to maximize your space. There are a lot of different ways to grow tomatoes, such as a large backyard garden or even a commercial tomato production farm. There's greenhouse production as well as container gardening. You can even grow tomatoes upside down or in a raised bed, even with the headboard and footboard. Soil is key to success. Having a healthy soil provides you with healthy plants. There are a variety of different ways to grow tomatoes, which I'll cover. But it all starts with providing that plant with good soil. Container gardens, you're going to want to use a good potting mix intended for vegetables. You can create your own potting mix. There's a variety of recipes out there for that. On top of the garden, that's where you are essentially creating a container garden, but it's kind of a box. Square foot gardening uses this method, and they're going to recommend using some type of potting mix. In ground, that's where you create a raised bed without the edging, and you're amending the soil with compost. Raised bed would be using edging such as wood or stone to maintain the shape of the bed, and you also amend that with compost. So within container gardens, the way to be successful is start with a good mix that contains peat moss, vermiculites, perlites, or expanded shale. Make sure you're prepared to water more frequently because it's going to dry out more quickly than a raised bed. In the summer months, you might even have to water twice a day. And because you're watering so much, you're going to need to fertilize more frequently. You can either use a liquid fertilizer or a slow release fertilizer. And as always, make sure you provide adequate sunlight for those plants. Consider using mulch, even within that pot, to reduce evaporation and insulate the soil. In-ground preparation of raised bed without the edging, more beneficial compared to containers because you need less soil modification. You can create a larger garden. It provides better drainage and aeration of the soil. You're tapping into that existing nutrients by improving the existing soil, so you won't require as much fertilizer. And you've also increased the depth of the soil and the roots, therefore the root system. A raised bed, that's where you're actually using edging. You need to start by removing the plants, construct the edging, till the soil 6 to 8 inches deep, add that 6 inches of compost, and till the compost into that existing soil. Install a drip irrigation system, then you're ready to plant the plants. Now make sure you add some type of mulch. I prefer a shredded hardwood mulch at a 3-inch layer, but always make sure that you never till that mulch into the soil, because that can cause problems. So why do we recommend compost and mulch? Because they work together to provide a slow release fertilizer. They improve the soil properties. They improve infiltration and retention of water. They improve the population and diversity of beneficial microorganisms. They reduce the need for chemical fertilizers and the risk of environmental contamination. Reduces evaporation of soil moisture, splashing of the soil, which can lead to diseases. Obviously, mulch reduces your weeds and insulates the soil from temperature extremes. Those temperature extremes can lead to stressed plants. So I mentioned soil testing earlier. Soil testing helps to identify a good site for a garden, determine how much fertilizer you need to apply, and then identifies limiting or excess nutrients. And it also allows you to know which plants you can grow. Compost provides a significant amount of nutrients, so you may want to test your garden after you've amended it to see what the level of nutrients are. Visit the soil testing website at Texas A&M for more information. Variety selection is important. We encourage you to consider the recommendations from your local extension service. Those recommendations typically are varieties that have a lot of disease and pest resistance. They're adapted to our climate and soil. They're heat tolerant, productive, and taste good. So if you're growing tomatoes in North Texas, start with a variety that's known to grow well here. As you gain experience, you can try out other varieties. Heirloom varieties offer a variety of flavors but lack disease resistance and soil adaptability, so you may consider grafting those heirlooms onto improved varieties such as Celebrity. There are recommended varieties for container gardens. Here's a list from the Extension Service. And for Collin County, Texas A&M recommends the following varieties. Collin County Master Gardeners have a lot of experience growing tomatoes. These are their recommendations for varieties both large and small. Plant selection. When you're considering which varieties to select, many times they'll abbreviate different letters for different disease resistance. This is what those letters stand for. If there's a number that corresponds with that letter, it's because there's a different race of that disease causing microorganism. You can start your own seed indoors or in a greenhouse or buy transplants. Most of us are going to buy transplants, but make sure that they have the variety that you're wanting to grow. When you install the plants, I prefer the traditional method where you dig a small hole and plant it properly into the ground, taking care not to damage the plant while you're planting. You can also lean the plant over and create a small trench to plant it in if the plant is large. Tomatoes are able to grow adventitious roots on their stem, and so you can plant it a little deeper. If you happen to get a tomato plant that's leggy, like this one, that has large spaces between where the leaves attach, you can dig a trench and plant it much deeper. The hope is that the stem will develop into a large root system and support a large plant. There are a variety of ways to cage, trellis, and stake tomatoes using a traditional cage, cattle panels, even cedar posts. Irrigation is important. We recommend drip irrigation. I recommend the inline emitter type drip irrigation. You can connect that to a typical garden hose or plumb it into your existing irrigation system. Fertilization can be applied through a drip irrigation system. You can use granular or even liquid fertilizer. Here's the different nutrients to consider for gardens. NPK, or nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, are your key ingredients. Plants need those in the largest quantity. The soil around here tends to have some natural levels of phosphorus and potassium, so make sure you have a soil test so you know how much of the nutrients are available to the plant. Here's some tips for pest and disease management. Crop rotation is good for preventing diseases in the future so that they don't develop in the soil, so make sure you move plants that are in the same family around the garden. Use drip irrigation and mulch to prevent splashing of that potentially infested soil on plant surfaces. Use disease-resistant varieties, sanitize your tools, don't wound the plant, Consider soil solarization to reduce or eliminate insects, diseases, and weeds. That's essentially covering the garden with clear plastic to heat up the soil to kill those different organisms. Be mindful of bringing in any infested soil, compost, or plants. Make sure you purchase those supplies from a reputable source. Make sure you water correctly. Don't over or underwater. Water deeply and infrequently to encourage root growth, and allow the soil to dry slightly between watering. Harvesting is as simple as picking that beautiful red ripe tomato off the vine. You can also pick green tomatoes for different recipes. If you have problems with birds and other insects eating your tomatoes when they're vine ripened, you may consider picking them after they've turned slightly yellow, because they'll ripen off the vine. And it's encouraged to store them at room temperature and utilize them as quickly as possible. Placing them in a paper sack is a convenient way to do that. I appreciate your attention and for watching this video. Feel free to contact me at my email address or visit our website for upcoming programs. Thank you.